There is a belief among many religious groups today that God's people, when they receive the baptism of the Holy Spirit, receive as an outward sign the ability to speak in tongues. Their idea of speaking in tongues is making some unrecognizable sounds, which in defense they refer to those sounds as being a heavenly language that only God understands. Sometimes, when one supposedly has received the Holy Spirit but is still unable to speak in these sounds, they admit to imitating what they hear others saying in order to be accepted by that body. Friends, this is not something that I have made up to be critical of these people, but it is what some of them have told us after seeing the error of their way and leaving such a movement. Let us now go to the Scriptures and see what the Bible teaches on this subject. Christ promised that after his departure he would send the Holy Spirit to be with the apostles, John 14 and verse 26. When the apostles were baptized with the Holy Spirit, one of the signs was that they began to speak in other tongues as the Spirit gave them utterance, Acts 2 verses 1 through 4. The record goes on to say, "And there were dwelling in Jerusalem Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven. Now when this was noised abroad, the multitude came together and were confounded, because that every man heard them speak in his own language." Acts 2 verses 5 and 6. As the story continues, people from many countries were there, and they were amazed as well as confused. They concluded that since these were only poor, uneducated Galileans who were speaking these languages, that they must be drunk. But Peter explained that they were not drunk as the crowd had supposed, since it was early in the morning. But that which was happening was according to what Joel had prophesied long ago, that in the last days the Lord would pour out his Spirit upon all flesh, Acts 2, verses 7 through 17. The apostles, as pointed out, were able to speak in other languages as a result of having the baptism of the Holy Spirit. The Lord knew they would be preaching the gospel to many people of many different languages in many parts of the world in the decades to come. So he gave them the miraculous ability to speak in the local language regardless of where they were, without having to learn all of those languages or to depend upon a translator. This would be both a means of convincing people that they had been sent by God to proclaim His will, and would also enable the apostles or disciples to move quickly in the spreading of the gospel. But what about the unknown tongue? Well, it was simply that. Because of persecution, there was a great deal of moving from place to place by Christians. Even though a man had the miraculous gift to speak in a certain language he had not studied, if he was assembling with a church in which no one spoke that language, he was forbidden to show off his gift by speaking what would sound like gibberish to them and be of no effect to his hearers. If a translator was there who could speak that language and could translate it, then the individual could speak. Otherwise, he was told to remain silent. Paul said, "I thank my God, I speak with tongues more than you all. Yet in the church I would rather speak 5 words with my understanding, that I may teach others also, than 10,000 words in a tongue." 1 Corinthians 14 and verse 18. Now, friends, we've already shown that one of the reasons for the apostles and those on whom they laid their hands was to be able to speak in tongues or other languages. This was to convince hearers that they had been sent by God and therefore to make believers of them. However, when you go into a modern day services where tongues are supposedly being spoken, it's made up of people who are already believers. Even in this, these people are not following the scriptural procedure that is given. But what about those who received the ordinary measure of the Holy Spirit, or the non-miraculous measure as spoken in Acts 2 and verse 38? Could they speak in other languages? Well, no, they could not, and there is no example to be found in the New Testament where they were ever able to do this. Furthermore, since there are no apostles today, and those upon whom they laid their hands have died, there is no one today who can miraculously speak in other tongues as was done in the days of the apostles. We need to understand that people today do not have the baptismal measure of the Holy Spirit. There are not apostles in the world today who can pass those gifts on to others. Therefore, the miraculous age, which includes the ability to speak in other tongues miraculously, has come to an end. Friends, we thank you for joining us today, and have a blessed day.